Welcome to Our Android Week. I'm Dan McDermott, your host, who knows not as much about Android as my co-host, Alan Furstenberg. Welcome, Dr. Furstenberg. Always a pleasure. Published author of Designing and Developing for Google Glass. You'd think
Hey,
after
Dan.
you'd think after 4 years of this show I could pronounce Google without slurring it. But anyway, that's a whole separate topic. Okay, so next, our first topic tonight is this. I almost wasn't going to do it because I didn't see it on anything else. I just saw it on Mashable. But as I read, the topic is it's Microsoft goes rogue, Windows on Android. And I was reading, and apparently they're playing around with this, actually running Windows as these phones get better and better. Maybe you can explain it better and tell me if this is a thing or just a toy.
Well, it's neither. It's also, what basically they're saying is that now certain Android devices, namely ones from Xiaomi, um, can have their boot ROMs replaced with one that will boot up Windows 10. Doesn't mean much of anything, to be perfectly honest. All it means is that now Windows 10 might be able to work on Xiaomi phones. That's it. Nothing exciting there, really.
It would be, when we say Windows 10, do we mean Windows 10 or Windows 10? I mean, like the
We
Windows
mean,
Mobile version
well,
or what?
Microsoft says there's only one version of Windows 10, known as Windows 10, but it will be the one that has a mobile profile.
So scaled down.
Well, what you'll see on their Lumina line of phones,
I don't hear the hating going on anymore that I did
because nobody cares.
because nobody uses it.
It's fine. It's adequate. Nobody cares.
And for the record, the three people who had Windows Phone, one is deceased, but the remaining two still like it. So they're batting 100 as far as my real life world experience with Windows Phone. So this is not a serious threat. This is not.
Well, it's no more a serious threat than Windows Phone is a serious threat to Android.
Okay, so it's not a serious threat. All right, so speaking of,
But well, I don't know, Dan. That's what they said about Android, 7 years ago, right?
yeah, and we don't want to use the term JV because Obama used that about ISIS early on, and it didn't end well. Okay, so this other story, and this has been all the talk, and I kind of read it, and it's sort of like you wish the thing that could be. You can now run Android apps on a Mac or PC with Google Chrome. So it's I guess my impression, and I could be wrong. My impression was this is less kludgy, less ghetto than the previous ways you could do this, and this is not something that mainstream people are going to do. But it's still advancing, and it's heading in that direction.
Yeah,
How,
it's not quite at the point where everyone's going to do this, but it's getting to the point where um, it's not an unreasonable thing for people to do. I still don't understand why, but it's not totally out there.
there are some cool. One of the things I would say would be Flipboard. I was excited about the ability to run Flipboard on desktop because I couldn't run it on desktop, but now they allow it. So
Well, but A, now you can run Flipboard on desktop, and B, there are aspects of Flipboard that work better and make sense on desktop that don't as a mobile app that runs on desktop. Cater to the form factor. I'm not quite sure I get why people really want to do this so much.
my experience, I've said this before. My experience is that in 99.9% of the cases, if there is a desktop version and a mobile version or tablet version of the same application, the mobile and tablet versions are 99% of the time a scaled down compromise version of the real full featured version, which is on desktop. And so why on earth you would want to run, you know, that version on your desktop is beyond me. But there are a few examples, but I don't see, I still think this is an experiment for hackers, and it's cool. They're getting better at it, but I don't know. I don't think we're at the point where I don't think it makes sense to try to do the exact same thing on every device, because there are different needs when you're mobile versus desktop. Okay, so we saw this story here. Consumers withdraw U.S. lawsuit over Google against Google over Android app limits. This was a thing complaining that, and it was obviously people who weren't aware of the intricacies of these agreements, because a couple other stories show that you can run Android however you want, but if you choose to use Google, you choose to use Google, and that's your choice. And I think they're paying for the right to do it because that's what people want. But their lawsuit was that it defaulted to the Google search versus Bing, etc. YouTube versus whatever the alternative to YouTube is, if there is one. There really isn't. But this is not unexpected, Alan. Any thoughts on this lawsuit?
No, not really. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting argument that they're making, is that Google's agreement, Google is essentially forcing or coercing handset manufacturers to paying Google, and by doing so, they're raising they're forcing the price higher. When Android is an open source project, but it really didn't have a great deal of merit, I don't think.
Okay, so I don't know why I didn't put this. I guess because I was doing a search of Android, but let's talk about Radio Shack and how apparently 1,700 of the stores have been saved. I say saved. We'll see how it works. But a hedge fund made a deal. They were one of several competing offers because Radio Shack's going out of business. So we've talked about this before. But it appears that they're going to be co-branded with Sprint. And I saw one. I don't know if it was an actual thing from the interested parties or if it was an artist rendering, but they showed like the big Sprint logo and then Radio Shack underneath it. But if Sprint is going to gain 1,700 additional, of course they're already in Radio Shacks, but if they're going to gain, like on the marquee, 1,700 additional footprints, that is significant. I think it's 1,746 or some number like that. And who knows if this is going to work or if they're going to be able to survive, or this is just delaying the inevitable. Because in the end, you don't really need to get the cable because you can get it tomorrow from Amazon. But any thoughts on that? We always
I have
invite
no
new
idea how you
competition.
assess that 1,700 Sprint stores are significant in any way, shape, or form.
If it's 1,700 more than previously existed, I would say, and Radio Shacks are typically in shopping malls or strip malls.
Yeah,
It's not
but
like a
it's
cart or
1,700
kiosk.
stores to sell a product from a store that was already selling your product.
So you think it's just a name change, but it's the same crap.
I think it's stupider than that. Personally, I want to see Radio Shack go out of business so I can go, claim my rewards from the ones around here.
My only regret is you didn't say more stupider, so I could have trolled you about your English skills. But alas, you have duped me again. All right, so Alan is really excited about that story. Okay, so the Galaxy S6. Did you put this in? I don't think I saw this.
Oh, good grief, Dan.
The Galaxy
You
S.
put it in because I don't touch your stupid Flipboard. We discussed it earlier this week, however.
Now we were debating the difference between a tease and a dig. That was definitely a dig, or trolling versus teasing. That was trolling. Galaxy S6.
No, it wasn't. It was just me saying I don't touch your stupid Flipboard.
Fine. I didn't want you to touch it anyway. Galaxy S6 Edge review: innovative, impressive, and impractical. I don't think I did this. Maybe I did it in a dream. But anyway, I would agree. I think it's beautiful. It's got this side panel that's at an angle, and you can enjoy some proprietary Samsung apps. You can look at them and show them off to your friends, and of course never use them because there's no purpose. Like the stylus in the Note. I mean, I know some people use the stylus in the Note. I have one, but I never use it.
Did you read the review?
I didn't read it. I conceded in the beginning I didn't read the fucking thing. The flipping thing. Keeping with our Flipboard theme.
So basically, his argument is that while the Galaxy S6 is a pretty good device, it seems to work better. TouchWiz isn't as bad as it used to be. It's getting a lot better. The camera is better. Overall, it's a generally good piece of hardware. The Edge offers nothing really that significant. It offers the rounded edge on both sides, so the screen kind of wraps around a little bit. But because of that, it actually makes it more difficult to read and to use. And there's no good reason for it to be there.
Yeah, so Everyone should rush out and get one because it's the newest thing. I'm disappointed. That was facetious.
What are you disappointed at, Dan?
I don't know. All the forking. We're going to get more into that in a minute, but it's just like, it's almost like they're deliberately driving people to iOS, where there's a consistent single experience and there's not all this. But this is all
There's
caused.
not a consistent single experience in iOS.
If it's the same OS, you would.
No. What bullshit are you listening to?
Okay, set me straight.
There's lots of different experiences on iOS. Mostly because of the fact that in some cases the hardware doesn't support what the software is able to do. Siri works differently on them. You don't have the fingerprint scanner on all of them. Now these are just, the base, and you've definitely got different screen resolutions. My God, you've got more screen resolutions on iOS than you do on most Android devices nowadays.
Well, I know that there are differences based on device. Playing with an iPad versus an iPhone, like many apps are different.
Sure, so there are
Things in
differences
different
based on an
places.
Android device too. What's the difference?
1200 versus like 12 different
What,
devices.
dollars?
Devices or dollars. Craig would say dollars. I'd say devices. All right, so we all agree the S6 is just badass, and mortgage, sell your kids to buy one. Under 1% of Android devices affected by potential harmful applications. Oh my God. What the hell is going on?
Dan's computer is exploding. This computer will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
I'm going to tell her. I'm in a live show. Alan, tell us about this 1% of Android devices affected by potential harmful applications while I politely dispense with my sales rep.
Sure. So basically, Android released a security survey recently, kind of like part of the State of Android series. And it examined what the security vulnerabilities are, and it basically discovered that less than 1% of all users have sideloaded malicious applications. Now, this doesn't include people who rooted their machine, who are just, asking for all sorts of trouble. But these are people who deliberately turned off the ability to just download from the Play Store and are sideloading apps. And when you start sideloading apps from other locations, you start running the risk that you're going to install malware. And they concluded that the actual total number of people who have done so is under 1%. Nothing terribly big, terribly dramatic.
Okay, excellent. I feel better already. And then this next story, Gook's Arc Welder, that's just a different version of you can run Android apps on Windows and Mac. Okay, Google News for Android has improved itself. You should check that out. New push notifications for
I
important
got to
news
tell you,
and stuff.
Dan, this was the most shocking story of the entire thing. I had never heard of this application before, and I'm sure most people haven't either. What the hell is this shit?
Are you joking? We've had the head of it on our show.
What, Google News and Weather?
Google News, Richard Gingras has been on the show. Once or twice? Once?
Yeah, but wasn't he doing like website? What is this app? Have you ever used it?
I think I have it. Yeah, I've used it a couple times.
Really? What does it do?
What does Google News do? It
What
gives
does
you
Google
news.
and Weather do? I've never heard of it before.
Are you trolling me now? Or are you serious?
No, I'm not.
No, I'm serious. I've used it. It's a nice app. It tells you news and weather from Google.
Ooh, that's way too clever.
That's the name.
Does it even come in? It's not even installed by default on my device. I've never heard of this before. And I can't imagine anyone else has either.
Maybe that's why they introduced a feature and pushed out a press release, called in some favors.
Ooh, they introduced a feature that nobody cares about.
Oh boy.
Honestly.
More
it's gotta be one of the
notifications.
dumbest- What?
More notifications. I'm spending most of my time on my phone turning notifications off. But yeah, it has like, okay, it's got top stories, weather. Then it wants me to rate the app. Then it looks at my where I am. Basically, it's a news app that takes into account Google's knowledge, vast knowledge of everything I search or whatever. It's got sections for
Isn't that
Tesla,
called Google
WikiLeaks.
Now?
Yeah, Google Now is great.
How does this differ from Google Now?
It's an app that's different from Google Now.
Fine.
It's a new.
So why don't you tell us about this wonderful app that everyone should have installed, because it sure didn't come installed by default.
It's okay. I mean, it's a news app. What do you want? You know. Check it out. Richard will be. We'll get him back on the show, and he can defend his honor. It's a nice app. You know, it has news and weather, and notifications now. He'll never come back on the show again if he watches this. Okay, so Google opens up Chrome OS for Android developers. Everyone can port their apps now.
We already covered this one.
Tonight,
Yep.
Pentagon personnel now. Did I have that same story in 3 times?
Probably.
Pentagon personnel now talking on NSA-proof smartphones. This was interesting because President Obama uses a BlackBerry, as do most of those guys in the top secret realm, most federal government folks. And I guess they're getting these from the Silent Circle company. Is it the Black Phone? What's it called? The Black
Yes,
Phone.
the Black Phone.
So now the government, the Pentagon is getting NSA-proof phones. Does anything like this scream irony to you? I don't think anyone knows exactly what the NSA is doing. I thought we were supposed to fix the silos of information and no one communicating with each other after 9/11. I think that was the whole justification for the Homeland Security Department overseeing everything, which has worked so well, especially the whole Secret Service angle. Anyway, while Alan is reading the article, I will just remind everyone that we have 2 programs. This program is Mondays at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. It's called Our Android Week, where we discuss Android news. On Fridays, we have another program called Google Plus Week. That's at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific on Google Plus and YouTube Live, where we discuss tech news with a Google-centric angle. Not that we're fanboys, although we sort of are, but we also call them out with gusto when appropriate, especially in Alan's part. So have you read enough to wing this?
Sure, I read the article. What's there to say?
Okay. So WhatsApp is adding voice calls for all Android users, iOS coming soon. So here we go. Like, I can use the Hangouts app for voice calls, and it all depends if you have good data. And if I'm like driving around, the data network, or the actual Sprint voice network, is far superior to the trying to make a data call. If I'm on my Wi-Fi, it's the opposite. And we're seeing the same thing with television. We're seeing everyone's getting the cord cutters, but you're still getting the data from the phone company, but you're using, I guess this is in other countries and other markets, or if you're on a plan where data, I don't know. I mean, this is an emerging market feature primarily, as is WhatsApp.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I'm not entirely sure who they think they're targeting with this. WhatsApp is definitely an emerging markets type application. I'm not sure why they think this is going to produce better results than dialing, but maybe it will.
I guess if you have really, if you're certainly if you're an emerging market, right? Translation, third world, but you can't say that anymore. It's an emerging market, and there's like really bad cell coverage, but they have these very popular internet cafes where you can get Wi-Fi, and then you can make a phone call for free, whereas it might be very expensive or impossible if you were either roaming or in a poorly covered area.
But the Wi-Fi cafes aren't free either.
Correct, but they might be cheaper. They must. I mean, there must be a demand for this, or they wouldn't have spent the time and effort to do this. And The Verge would not have written about such a thing. So anyway, I don't know anybody who uses WhatsApp. Richard, do you use WhatsApp?
We had this
He's
conversation
outside.
already.
I don't think he uses it. All right, so I don't think he'd heard of it, nor had any of his friends. And we talked about the custom maps, and there was some other story that I thought we were going to talk about. I can't remember.
Well, the other story that was out today was the fact that OnePlus seems to be launching
Exactly.
its own fork of Android.
I wanted to get your take on that because you have a OnePlus phone, correct, with Cyanogen.
Yes.
And we've seen Cyanogen do a big push. In fact, they're basically in I don't know if it's how much of it is PR stunt to get attention versus actual animosity. But he said like we're at war with with Android and blah blah blah. But they're all using Android. So the first example of this famously was Jeff Bezos creating the Kindle Fire line of devices. And he will be back with a phone that will be popular. Mark my words. I don't think he's to be counted out. Then we see Cyanogen, and now we see OnePlus, which famously started with Cyanogen. Now they're going to do their own flavor. And this was getting at what my thing was like, man, all these different things. It's just, you know, comparing this to iOS is what was what I was saying. All these different flavors and but anyway, what's your take on this? Because you actually have a OnePlus device. I think you like it, right?
Yeah, it's not bad.
So how do you compare? Or I guess you don't have the new one yet, but do you think this is a smart move, or what are your thoughts? Are you apprehensive?
Nobody's got the new one. This is just them saying they're going to do this. They're not even saying that it's available yet.
Okay.
Basically, this is part of their feud with Cyanogen right now.
What's
So, I don't know.
I wasn't aware of their Cyanogen feud. What's that about?
Oh, basically, the day, or maybe it was 2 days before OnePlus was about to launch in India, Cyanogen announced an exclusive deal with an Indian phone manufacturer, which
So
caused
they were forced into this, really.
OnePlus all sorts of problems. So yeah, basically.
So Cyanogen is mad at Google because they force you to use their exclusive apps if you want any Google stuff on your Android phone. So they created their own alternative to free you from that exclusivity, and then did an exclusive deal in India.
Yep.
Okay, so the whore you know is better than the whore you don't. So I'm sticking with Google versus Cyanogen. But this is just, I mean, I don't know. Talk about fragmentation. My God. And you know they're going to be ghetto. I mean, I'm sure Cyanogen has cool stuff that you don't get with the straight up Android, even rooted. I'm all for
Cyanogen blows. I don't know, Dan.
I was trying to be kind. Does it suck?
Cyanogen blows Google's plain one out of the water.
Oh, okay. So it's better. You're a big fan.
Oh, it's definitely better.
And do you still get the same stuff? Like you get YouTube and you get Gmail and all that. So you can still put all that stuff on there.
No, I still have all of Google's services except for Google News and who cares. But besides that, I get all of the Google apps.
When you're using your like Pure Nexus or close to it devices, although it's not a fair fight because probably their OnePlus is the newer of the.
You're right.
group.
You know what, Dan? It's not a fair fight because my Pure Nexus device isn't supported by Google anymore because they're a pack of flaming idiots, while my OnePlus is supported.
What have you done for me lately?
It's nothing to do with what have you done for me lately. It's what support did you say you were going to give me that you then failed to do.
Are you talking about your original Nexus 7?
Now my Nexus 7's broken.
Mine's fine. But okay,
Mine was
so
dropped several times.
so you think Cyanogen is superior to even raw pure Android,
Superior.
even pure Android on a modern device like a fast?
Yes.
Is there a modern recent device with pure Android?
Nexus 6.
Okay. So OnePlus is how are they going to do this? How do you just shit out your own competitor to Android and Cyanogen when you've got these whole ecosystems built up? You got one, rich corporation versus another startup.
You do the same thing that Cyanogen did. You take stock Android and you build on top of it in reasonable ways. It's not that hard.
And then they have to sideload like YouTube, right?
No, you sign an agreement with Google, so you get the Play Store and all of the Google apps.
Then why not just run the regular Android? Why go to the trouble?
Because because regular Android is insufficient to, move itself out of a moving truck.
I am continuously inspired during this program.
To do what?
I don't know. It's just frustrating, all this pulling of hair and gnashing of teeth with Android, and all these people fighting and forking, and the consumers.
Forking is good. Forking is what gave Android features 4 years ahead of iOS.
Okay. Any other thoughts, Dr. Furstenberg, other than you should
No.
buy his book from O'Reilly Media? It's an excellent book, co-authored with Jason Salas from Guam. All right. Hey, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Once again, this program is every Monday at 9 Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on YouTube Live and Google+. Our other program is Google Plus Week, which is every Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific on Google Plus and YouTube Live. That's called Google Plus Week, the longest running show on Google Plus. Although lately we've actually disciplined ourselves. So anyway, thank you all for watching and commenting. I'm going to check the comments. Last chance here if there's comments here. Reshare it, +1. And okay, we got comments from Wendell. I use that app all the time, the Google News app. Google News and Weather from Wendell. Google News and Weather app is linked to the news.google.com site. If you never use that or don't know of that, then it's no surprise you wouldn't know about the app. And when does anyone actually call anyone other than their parents, asks Joshua Hughes. Yeah, I guess a lot of it is you're texting, or the kid is what's the teen sexting app?
For the record, I text my
Snapchatting.
parents more than I call them on the phone.
Well, your parents are surprisingly spry and techie. Just kidding. Okay, so thank you all very much for watching. We appreciate the comments. Appreciate you watching. Until next time, have an excellent, epic, badass Android week. We'll catch you next Monday. This Monday. Every Monday.